Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking, a podcast focused on pet care and animal health. I am here this week with Dr. Cade Wilson, the founder of Skoped Micro. Dr. Wilson and I met, a couple years ago now, back at VMX 2021.
Yeah, that's actually that was our launching point for Skoped. It sure was. Yeah,
exactly. And we followed the rise of this company. I'm gonna let Dr. Wilson kind of walk us through what Skoped is in a minute for those of us who aren't aware. But it essentially kind of takes cytology and brings it into the clinic through the power of your phone. Correct?
That's exactly right. You know, I think I coined the term functional digital microscopy. That's a mouthful, but it's digital microscopy is using, you know, a phone or a camera system to look through a microscope. That's microscopy. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. You know, there's all types of camera systems in this world, but we just made it where it's easy for anybody. We've made a phone case and an eyepiece adapter. So you just pull the eyepiece out of your microscope, slide your smartphone in there, and then you've got a microscope with the brains of your phone, which can literally do anything. You know, I've found there are so many ways you can do that. Just today, I videoed some, what did I do? What did I show today? I showed a bookworm.
Let's look here.
On LinkedIn. I try to do a scoped case of the day. It's just kind of fun. So I did whipworm day. I also videoed some hookworms and some other stuff, but we'll roll those out another day. But we can use that for education. I was using those pictures actually to teach my client that I was seeing that dog today. We use it to collect those photos and videos for our files. We use them for digital pathology, where we can send them to a pathologist to read. I plug mine in and teach through Zoom, just like you and I talking today. You can actually use your phone as a secondary viewer. And I've taught a lot of classes, just literally sitting at the same desk, teaching people how to do ear cytology or fecal analysis, just really easily. And it's just turned into this crazy thing that when I made my first one for me, because I never dreamed that I would be selling these things. Like I did it to make me a better veterinarian, period. And it did. It made me a much better educator of my clients. And with them knowing what we're doing, man, it's made them better pet owners. And so then it started rolling down this crazy hill to where we are now. And like we talked earlier, we now have units on every continent except for Antarctica. It's insane to me to say that.
We'll throw it out there to the universe. If anyone knows a need for a scoped device in Antarctica,
we're in.
I'll give it to him. Yeah, he's giving it away. So if you know anyone in Antarctica,
right? It's been great because we make phone cases for every type of smartphone. We can attach to pretty much 99% of microscopes. Most microscopes are a one of two different sizes, 23 millimeter or 30 millimeter eyepiece. And so we make both those attachments. And so there's very few that we can't connect to. And so instead of buying a camera system that is thousands of dollars to sit on your microscope, you've already have one of the greatest cameras in the world in your pocket. Like the smartphone cameras today are insane.
So like on the latest iPhone or the Galaxy S23 or something.
I want an iPhone 14 so bad. I've got an 11 Pro, which I thought was amazing when I got it. But now the 13 and 14 cameras, or even some of the Android cameras, are unbelievable. And so I keep trying to figure out a reason to get, like, should I drop my phone really hard? You know, should I just kick it every now and then, just praying that it cracks?
You have insurance.
I do. I probably do. So.
But in the other side of my life, when I'm not doing pet care and animal health consulting, I consult in the insurance space, and
there you go.
So I've done several studies on cell phone insurance, so I can.
All right, I'm going to think about that. But it's been really amazing to talk to people. We've got a lot of them in the educational space now, not only in veterinary medicine, veterinary technician colleges. We have some junior highs using them to teach microbiology. We have some geologists looking at drilling sediment in the oil and gas industry. It's pretty insane.
Yeah. So let's rewind. So when we met, it was June 2021. We were I think it was the first like live conference I'd been to coming out of COVID. You guys were launching at VMX. And I remember, you know, back then at VMX, one of the big things was Heska was at the same time unveiling its Telecytology solution. So, you could get a cytology sample taken in the clinic. They could send it out, expedite the processing, and hopefully have an answer back to you from a board certified cytologist, if they rushed it within a matter of minutes, so that you're not leaving the clinic not knowing what's wrong with your patient.
Yeah.
You had a solution there, and I looked at it and I was like, this is interesting. You know, I don't know that this is designed to compete with Heska and, with Antec and the telecytology solutions they have out there, but you are bringing cytology into the clinic through the power of your phone. So, since then, where you mentioned all these places you have out there. How many have you sold? What's Scope looking at, like, in terms of adoption right now?
It's been a slow, I think our launch point, there's no way to know when a good time to launch a company is and when it's not. And right after COVID, probably not the world's greatest time. And like I said, that was the first meeting. And I've since tracked VMX. And so like this year, did you go this year? I didn't go this year.
I went to Western this year, Western Vet.
I can't remember. It was like a gigantic crowd there. When we were there, it was dead. And so I remember thinking, oh, this is great. And we've gone to our best. We do the best when we're in person. When people can touch it, feel it, see it, they're like, I'm leaving with that. I mean, it's unbelievable when it's in person. It's been harder, digitally, it really has been. And it hasn't caught on like I thought it would. I'm not going to lie to you, it hasn't. We've had lots of interest. We've got lots of companies. We have a couple of people that are selling for us, which has been great. Because it doesn't take me out of my normal gig. I am a veterinarian. I do own a veterinary practice.
We're going to get to that.
But the, as far as sales, we sell some every day, but I wish we were selling a heck of a lot more every day via online sales.
Yeah. And so you said you have people selling for you who's your target audience? It sounds like you've got a lot of these that are being used for educational purposes. Are you going in and pitching this as a value add to the clinic? Or
I still believe this is shines the most in the veterinary space. I still believe that, mainly because I use it every day, and people that get it and use it to its maximum. It's the only thing I have in my practice that literally pays for itself every day. It's the only thing outside of my veterinarians and myself. I mean, as far as tools, it pays for itself every day because I can utilize it as a education tool via social media. I can use it to prove to my clientele, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is real life. And it makes them better clients because they know, oh my gosh, I saw you get that sample. That is an ear mite, or that is a parasite, or that is a urinary crystal, and it helps them know why we're doing what we're doing.
So you can give them the photographic evidence in the context of the clinic. And I'm assuming this is for cases where you don't, it's a less complex cytological case where you can look at it. I know all veterinarians are going to get some form of basic cytology training in vet school, but then you also have people who specialize in pathology and cytology. What are the cases that you find are most helpful, with Scoped? What do you use it for the most?
Parasitology, urinalysis, neoplastic cases, we do a lot of fine needle aspirates where we're making our own slides. Where that's been really valuable is I have a close friend who's a pathologist. And so from the get-go, from the inception of this in 2015, I was sending him digital pictures and video and just saying, here's what we're seeing, what are your, before I send you off a mass or some slides, what do you think? And so we got good at just doing it right over the phone or via Zoom. We also did
so you're almost doing like what, Antec and Heska
you can do
and
that.
we're doing,
100% you can do that. 100% you can do that. And so the neatest thing is when we first started doing that, I would make those slides, even when we needed to send them in. And then I could come back and look at those and take pictures that I made. And that made me a better veterinarian because I would know the answer to the test. Because the pathologist would read it, send it back to me, and I could go back in there and teach myself, like, okay, that is this,
sure,
that is that. And so it made me much better at that too.
And so you're finding that, there are cases now that you don't have to send out because of Scope, that you can just look at it and you've seen it enough of it to be like, okay, I prepped this slide 100 times. I've sent this out to the lab for a reading. It's always come back at this. This looks exactly like that. And you can maybe give your client the option of like saying, hey, if you want that second opinion, we're happy to send this out. But I'm reasonably confident that this is what it is. And then you can save them some money and increase the value of your services.
I think as long as I'm 100% confident what that is, the answer is yes. I mean, there's so many other things in my life that we have to do that. And then the other thing is, it gives me the option to send that off digitally. I can make that slide. I can not only make a slide, I can take a picture or video. I like videos, by the way. Videos are better to me. So I'll take like a 10-second video, email that to my pathologist, take a 10-second video of multiple areas of the slide, send that pathologist, give him the history. And if he feels confident, which a lot of the time he does, because we've done it enough, he can say, that is this, and these are the margins you need, move on with life. I charge a lower rate for that. My pathologist charges a lower rate for that, but we can have results in minutes, if not seconds, at a lot of those times. It's also shined where I've been in surgery, taken mass off, looked at margins that I didn't really like, made slides from that, and send them off digitally during the surgery. So they know we're getting good margins. There's been multiple times we've done that. And so literally through your phone.
And with the pathologist that you work with, is he pretty much on call for you? Is that how you're able to turn it around so quickly?
Yeah, he's one of my closest friends. So I get some good, but anybody could do that. I mean, if you had a relationship with a pathology team and a pathology team was confident, and a lot of people will do digital cytology and pathology. And so if you have an outfit that's willing to do that, and there are several, then that's a good way you can start. Another thing is sending off pictures of slides before you send them. Like I've got a couple pathology groups that I know that will look at people's slides like digitally, give them what they call a free pre-read. And the idea is they want to make sure that when they get that is actually
the specimen hasn't been
at. Right.
Well, you don't have to worry about the specimen being damaged. You don't have to worry if it does get damaged. They have their reference point of like, hey, this is what it looked like before you sent it to me.
Or you make sure that there's a slide when it shows up, it's even worth looking at. They'll be like, oh,
right,
that's not even the sample we need. And so there's several pathologists. There's one at Oklahoma State University, is a close friend of mine too, that loves that idea. Like, well, yeah, I'd love to know that when it gets here, it's worth me even spending my time, and it's worth their time of making.
Sure.
So, the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. Yeah, sure. It's great when you can have something that's a big thing that you can look at, but you can look at things under oil, at a 100x type magnification and do really good with that. And you get the magnification of your digital zoom.
Right.
Like my microscope, if you just went back and looked, it's a 10x eyepiece, 100x maximum. So 1,000 power, right? That's the max. Well, I use a 15 power eyepiece, so that's going to give me a little bit more. And then you can digitally zoom your phone 10 times. So I've got a 15,000 power microscope, not 1,000. So there's some little things you can get a little bit better zoom on that. And no, we also went a little further because in the world we live in, this is after you and I met, we're like, well, what else is out there? What else can we play with? And so we went down the app road and we generated an app, the Skoped Micro app. It's not real catchy. It is what it is. But what we did was we made the only built-in micrometer so you can measure through your microscope. So you can say, well, how big is that? And the other thing is, if you're a pathologist or a microbiologist, whatever, and people are sending you pictures, what's the one answer or question you always have? What power are we at? Where are we at? Like, how big is that? And so we made it where on the video, it stamps the magnification you're at. So there's no question of what power are you. It will show you what power it is. So that's a couple of things we worked on, just trying to make it easier for guys like me, people like me, that are not going to be able to afford a $10,000 microscope camera. That makes no sense to me. But I got a crazy camera in my phone that can FaceTime you, can, you know, send you something LinkedIn. It can do anything right through the power of that phone. So
that is neat. I mean, and from a patient perspective, I mean, you know, in a client experience perspective, I'm just always so fascinated by these solutions that can get you a result quicker. You know, I made a post about the Volition Veterinary HESCA partnership earlier this year, where, you know, they're able to, you know, take the tissue sample and turn around a diagnosis on, you know, if it's cancerous or not, you know, really, really quickly.
yeah.
And, you know, when you're dealing with cytology too, it's like, ideally, you know, the longer you have to wait, and you're worried about, you know, does my dog have cancer or not? Or, you know, what is wrong with them? If you're waiting for slide to be prepped, slide to be packaged up, shipped out, sent to a lab, read, you know, you can be dealing with a few days. And those,
if not more. Yeah, if not more.
And that time is, I know from personal experience, my dog Peony had melanoma. It was like 3-4 years ago now, almost 4 years ago. We did the surgery in early 2020, but they found it in 2019. And between the time I brought her in, they took the sample. And when we got the result, I had to go on a business trip. I was out in California. She was back here. And I'm there, you know, talking to my vet at, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning out in California, back here on the East Coast, you know, getting this news that, you know, the pathologist says it's suggestive of a melanoma. We would recommend you remove it. And, you know, but it was days of waiting. And, you know,
I mean, anything you can speed up that curve, not just on the patient client side. For me, like, I need a game plan. I need a game plan to tell my owners of this pet, and then I need to figure out how we're going to go down this path together. And that's been the greatest thing. Is so when I do a lot of needle biopsies, I do a lot of cytology for obvious reasons. I love it, but it's fun when I walk in the room and I got a new client. Maybe I'm a second opinion. And I walk in there and I see a mass, and I'm like, okay, well, let's tell me the history, and we kind of work through that. And then I always say, 99 times out, let's do some needle biopsy. Let's take some samples. So we'll do that in the room. I'm really big on, we're doing it right here with that client, so they see what we're doing. There's no hocus pocus. You know, I want them to be a part of that team, because they are. And then we'll make the slides right there in the room. And I was like, okay, we'll be right back. And they'll say something like, well, when do you think we'll know? I'm like, oh, we're going to know in about 5 minutes. I'm reading these right now, you know. And so if there's something, we're going to talk about it. And in most cases, you're going to get to see it too, because it just helps make it real.
You can show them the image on your phone, kind of walking through. And
that's the thing, like, is there's not the old back and forth of me looking through the microscope and then you look, and I'm trying to describe something to you that you've never seen. You know, you've never seen it. So we'll pull it up on my phone. I'll walk them back to the microscope. So there it is, you know, on an iPhone screen. Everybody knows what that looks like. And then I almost always open up like a pathology book, and they'll have cytology pictures in there. And so I always pull them up if I know what it is, show them, like, here is, let's say it's a mast cell tumor. That's a very common tumor type. I'll show them in the book. I'll show them on their dog, you know, on the microscope screen. And so all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, that's what it is. Yeah. And that gives them confidence in me. And a lot of times if you're a second opinion or they've had bad experiences, I want them to be confident. I want them to be confident, number one, and I know what it is. And then number two, that gives them some confidence that I may know what to do because we're a team. Like they're an extension of my staff. When they walk out of there, they've got to do what I'm telling them so that we have the best chance to make that patient's experience really good, number one, and hopefully curative. And if not curative, we'll have a plan to make that dog's life or pet's life better. That's my job. So
yeah,
Skoped Micro has just made me better at that job. And I'm very thankful for that. For whatever it turns into be, I'm very thankful for where it's got me so far.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds now, Cade, when you're thinking about, the clinics out there that, maybe considering a telecytology solution from the more, do you see Skoped kind of fitting in alongside, if I'm a HESCA practice or an IDEX practice or an Antec practice?
It should. I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of solutions out there. I've played with them all. I know of all my quote unquote competitors, but I don't even see them as competitors. I see them as different versions of what we're doing. And so I've always looked at Skoped Micro as almost like a light version of these cytology machines. There are practices like mine. I'm a very successful practice, but we can't afford some of those solutions. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for my business. It doesn't make sense to pass some of those costs on. Now, if you're a practice that can turn them over a lot and maybe by volume, make them make sense, the Scopio type situations of the world where you're like, God, I can't afford that. I can't afford that machine. But if I can take those images that are really, really good, send them into one of these pathology groups, HESCA, LE, IDEX, any of those, and say, hey, can you read half of these? If half of them are readable and are diagnostic, they can charge a fee for that. I can charge a fee for that. And the client will not have as big of expense. And there's going to be a portion of them, no matter what. It doesn't matter what machine. There is a portion that are like, man, that's just not diagnostic enough with that image. We need more. And you're going to have to send tissue in, period. And I don't care what their solution is. But there's a big segment that would help the average size vet clinic and down. It would pull them into the telepathology, telecytology, whatever game, and would help a large segment of the pet population, period.
Yeah. I mean, I think that hits the nail on the head, right? If you're, you were just practice of the year regionally, and was that for all of Oklahoma or?
No, it's South Central. It's probably probably a sixth, something like that. I don't know, but a lot of that is based on the fact that we educate our clientele so well. We take pride in that, and an educated client is a better client, and an educated client's a better pet owner. And so I think now I'd like to think I'd win it no matter what. Maybe I win it on looks. I don't know. Maybe not. But I take great pride in having educated clients and healthy pets. And so that's my job. And so Skoped is a big part of that. There's no doubt.
Now, within your practice, Cade, is it just you, or how many other veterinarians did you employ?
So I have two other veterinarians. So I'm a 3-doctor practice. Probably should be 4. We have a big workload, but again, we are a practice that literally we built it from me. It was just me and 2 other individuals. I literally was the person that mopped the floor every night. And this is our 17th year. And so now we're a 3-doctor practice, and both of those doctors grew up in this practice. One of them started job shadowing me when she was 13.
Wow.
Today's her 32nd birthday. And so that's pretty cool. The other one started working for me when she was 16. She's just a little bit younger. And so both of those are homegrown young people from my area that I told them, hey, don't come right back. Like, go figure yourself out. And so neither one of them did. I didn't know if either one of them come back, but life's funny. And so they're back. They're like my little sisters. I've got a couple other people kind of in the veterinary pipeline, as I'd call it. Maybe we grow with homegrown, maybe we don't. But my staff are my family. That I see these people more than I see my kids and my wife. And so I believe really strongly in a really good, there's days they don't like me and there's days I don't like them, but I want them to love coming to work with us, even though some days you don't love work. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's not easy to have that. And when people leave for many different reasons, I've got a young lady that's moving, and man, it's hurtful because that's just one of my other sisters, and so but man, it's more fun to go to work when you love everybody. And so
do you feel like that helps? I mean, we've talked a lot on Petworking here, in terms of veterinary burnout, work-life balance, mental health awareness within the veterinary profession. But I think for so many people, whether it's in as a practicing veterinarian or whatever your profession might be, burnout oftentimes stems from, not being happy with the culture or environment in your workplace. So it seems like, you've got that part figured out. Would you guys?
I don't think I have anything figured out, but yes, I thought a lot about this. As a practice owner, you're never going to always like everybody. You're just not going to. Personalities, but man, when you can respect each other and know that you've got everybody's best interest at heart, I think there's something to that. And I think that I did not have what I would call a very good mentor. When I went into veterinary medicine, I had people I worked with, but I never thought, oh yeah, I can call them with anything, period. And so I take great pride and I work really hard at them knowing they can call me about anything. It doesn't have to be work. You got something going on, call me, and so I think that's helpful. I think that's really helpful, just to be a genuine person, straight across.
Yeah.
And then and also just saying, at any given moment, I'm going to do what's the right thing. Golden rule. I've got literally on my front desk up front, there's a sign that says golden rule, and it says, talks about treating everybody the way you want to be treated. I mean, it's like kindergarten, right? Just treat everybody the way you want to be treated. But man, in our workspace, and I've worked in a lot of different, growing up, I worked in a lot of different avenues, but our workspace is a very interesting because people bring their pets in. That is their family member. They love them.
Yeah.
Right? And a third of the time they're coming in here and they're sick, they're injured, they're hurt, they're in distress. I mean, and man, you're worked up. You're worked up because your fur child, right, is sick and hurting or painful. And we're here and we're busy practice. And there's times you're like, oh, God, we're drowning already, but we're going to try to help because that's what veterinarians do. We're going to try to help. But maybe you just went through a traumatic incident with a pet like 30 seconds ago, and then you're walking to the new one, and it's volatile, I think is the word. And then the idea of, what's the buzzword? Compassion fatigue? Yeah, man, that can be really real. And so I've really talked a lot to my coworkers about how do you manage that, and I had a boss, man, he was a terrible boss. I'm not going to say his name, but he was terrible, but he also said one of the most amazing things to me at one of the few moments that I was like, wow, that was amazing. And I was a young veterinarian and I was having one of those days where I felt like Dr. Kevorkian, and you're just like, oh my God, everything gonna die today? And I was taking it pretty rough because I didn't have the time. I've been a veterinarian, this is my 20th year. I've seen a lot, but I was in my first year. I hadn't seen anything, really, where I was in charge of the whole thing. And I was having to explain to this older client, in my mind, she was 80. She's probably 45 now when I think back. But I was trying to explain to her end of life care. And I had zero business having that talk with this person. They'd have hellaciously more experience than me. And I took it hard. And that guy told me, he said, listen, you're a veterinarian. You're not an MD. You're not a pediatrician. You're a veterinarian. And in the human world, you should have the same life expectancy as almost all your patients. You're gonna be with them for a time period, but they're going to maybe outlive you. If you're an older MD, or if you're a pediatrician, they're going to go away. They turn 17, 18, they're going to go away. You're a veterinarian. You are going to see the entire life arc of your patients. If you have a normal practice life, all of your patients today are going to die while you're still practicing. You're going to be a pediatrician. You're going to take care of them when they're in the middle of their life. You're going to see the end. And you got to know how to deal with all those. Holy crap, that was a lot to take in as a 27-year-old guy. But I thought about that a lot. And so, there's different times where my job is different. It's how to get them through their puppyhood so they don't eat a bunch of socks as a golden doodle and die. Or how do we talk about general health? And then it's, how do I keep them healthy? How do I keep them playing? How do I fix their ACL? How do I do all these things? And then it's, how do I make them a good geriatric? Or at the very end, it's, how do I help this patient through its last days? And more importantly, how do I help these owners work through this? Because I see it every day. I see it every day.
But I saw you just had an article out on end of life care, and obviously it's not a subject anybody likes to talk about, but I think it's an important one to be prepared for.
Very important, because those patients deserve dignity, and they deserve to be loved, and sometimes that means euthanasia. And so knowing how to work through that is great for our patients. It's great for our clients, but it's great for us in the industry, because we've got to work through that. And it's part of our job. We hate it, but there are times when you're like, okay, we're losing this game. But how can I help this pet have dignity at the end, and keep them out of pain, keep them out of suffering? And at some moments, I hope that I educate my clients enough to know, okay, every day is worse than the day before. It's not fair anymore. And there are a few times, doesn't happen very often, but there are times where you got to step in, because I am the advocate for the pet. At some moment, I am in charge. And
that's got to be a tough conversation to have if you have an owner who's not ready to let go.
But if you're, that's why it's so important in education, because if I've done a great job up front and you understand the arc of that disease process, and I'm like, hey, at this moment, when we start seeing these, it's probably time, and let them lead it, right? But there are times where you're like, okay, we're crossing a line. And it's my job now to say, hey, listen, it's not fair. It's just not fair. Yeah, you're right. It's not fun.
No, but you raise a good point. And, something I'd be curious about. I've talked to a lot of vets who say, look, client education and follow-up and, fitting that into the context of my practice is, it's one of the hardest things, right? I have all these cases coming in. I'm, going from one room where I've dealt with a traumatic experience to the next room, and I've, but to hear you describe it, I think you just did a really, really eloquent job of kind of underscoring the importance of making sure that that pet owners are aware of what you're doing, and that you're educating them well, so they feel comfortable moving along that treatment journey with you. Right. And how do you fit in the time to do that? Are you exploring anything like,
great segue. I got one for you. So I teach an online, well, it's been online so far. I'm going to teach it this summer for Oklahoma State University, but I teach a CE, and it's not just the dental. All right. But it's not just about dental health. I use dental health as my transit for this thing, but it's more about veterinary practice / client conflict, and so which drives that whole burnout. You're like, oh my gosh, I got to talk to so and so about such and such, and I hate that talk. Well, the whole premise of that talk is the word you should use, the way you should educate on the front end, and it's not just the dental. Is if I walk in a room, and I will here as soon as we're off this talk here, about 30 minutes, I walk in a room, I'll look at some pet physical exam, and there will be a dog's mouth that'll just be atrocious. You're like, ugh. Matter of fact, you don't have to look. You can smell it when you walk in. And that's more common than you would think. But if I just looked at those owners and said, hey, your dog needs a dental, they'll be like, oh, okay. And they just think we just need to brush his teeth or something, right? But in all honesty, that dog probably has teeth that are only being held in by plaque, or they've got a big fracture on one tooth that's going to need to be removed, or there's going to be all these other things. And so if I will take the 5 minutes, usually not even that, and sometimes it can be my veterinary technicians, because they're great. We've worked really hard, so we all are on the same page, and say, hey, we need to do a dental procedure on your dog. Yes, we're gonna scale and polish them, sure. But see that tooth and that tooth and that tooth, they're going to fall out. The only thing holding them in is the fact that where they're at, and there's a big ball of plaque. And so they're coming out. I'm not going to pull them. Gravity is going to pull them when that's off of there. And then we're going to need to be on antibiotic. It's going to be anti-inflammatories. We may have to do a gingival flap, all these things. I didn't make this up. I'm showing it to you, and so they come in, maybe it's not as bad as I even thought, but when they come in and they pick up their dog and he's got 6 less teeth, it hits a little different than if I just said, your dog needs a dental, and he goes home with 6 less teeth. Did it take any more time? Nope. Because if I didn't tell you, number one, I got to talk to you for 10 minutes up front because you're pissed off at me. You're going to slam me on Facebook. You're going to tell 5 people how crappy a dentist I am. Instead, if I take the 5 minutes up front, I am a great veterinarian. You should take your pet to them. Oh my gosh, it wasn't even as bad as he said it was going to be. He did this and this and this, and it's better. It's no less time, but it feels different, and so I am mega big on education, because it's going to make me practice longer, because I'm not putting out fires. I'm mowing my fire lane and keep my fires from happening. I think we would be wise for it. I think that people, we'd like to do the least amount, but man, if you would just, as I like to say, set your table correctly, your life's a lot different.
Sure. And I think, when you think about it, I think a lot of vets say, there's so many aspects to being a veterinarian that I didn't learn in vet school, right? I didn't understand, the importance of, like what you just described, of managing the people relationship of my practice, of educating my clients, of, all these sorts of things. And I almost wonder if that's part of the solution, to this, pandemic, for lack of a better term, of veterinary burnout, is better preparing veterinarians when they're in school for some of the things that don't necessarily just relate to animal healthcare and veterinary medicine.
I would agree with you. I think that, and maybe not even, I know I was my class president, so I literally still sit through meetings, and I sat through one this last week from alumni from my college. But, the burnout's not a new thing. I know older veterinarians that went through that way before we even talked about it. But I think it's worse now because, again, I don't think I worry about younger people's social skills, I really do sometimes, but, I've been a part of a couple of different mentor programs. We have to work in a vet practice to get into vet school more times than not. You got to have some sort of veterinary experience. You have to have somebody sign off, write you a couple letters. But I really think the few mentor programs I've worked with people who didn't grow up around me, and there's been a couple of times where they signed me up to some young person and I was their buddy, either veterinary buddy or whatever. I think some things like that are very valuable. Just to kind of talk through some things where you can be like, hey, how do I deal with this, or how would I deal with that? And there's no my grandpa used to say there's no replacement for learned experience, and so once you've been through it, you don't forget it. But man, if you could teach some people some things via mentorship, maybe every 4 years you get a new student, there's plenty of veterinarians out there. And I know a lot of us think, oh, I don't need to be the person who does that. Bull crap. You are. You could be valuable for one person. And more times than not, it helps me as much as it helps them. Because I'm like, okay, I get to live through this again with your eyes and I'll do a better job. And so
sure,
that can be a very valuable thing.
Yeah. No, now have you explored? You good? Okay. It's not like the doorbell. Never has.
Hey, some days I don't like the doorbell. I'm not gonna lie. So what were we gonna say? You were gonna ask.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Have you explored any? One thought I had. There's all these new, televet, telerelief models coming out there. Yeah. Is that anything you've explored within your practice, or do you see? Obviously, we talk about people's social skills and educating them and things like that, but would you see something, like we did an episode a few weeks ago with Frank DeCecco and DVM6, and he has a televet solution where they contract with practices individually to serve as like a televet relief model. Is that something that you would, would see as being viable to, helping somebody out who might not be, might be a great clinician, might be a great practitioner of medicine, but maybe not the best at explaining it to their clients?
So a couple of different things there. So I was really quick to get on the telehealth bandwagon. As soon as COVID hit, and all of a sudden, we never closed our doors. We just figured out new solutions. I called the state and I was like, tell me about what your thoughts are on telemedicine for veterinarians. So they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, here's what I'm going to do. So sign off on it because I'm doing it. And that was, you can't diagnose a broken leg. Okay. You can't do things like that, but you can see respiratory things. There are several things that you could help clients with, especially during that COVID craziness. And we'd have clients that they just weren't going to get out, but they still had that pet and that pet still needed something. And so, the idea, I think what you're saying is the idea of for a clinician to do telehealth, correct? Is that was the question?
Yeah, well, just, somebody, I'm just thinking, maybe somebody who's not as skilled at, reading the room with their clients, educating up front, kind of walking through that treatment journey, or maybe they don't have the time. But would you see something like that as sort of like a force multiplier if you've got somebody who's like, you know what, I'm kind of done being on the clinic floor, but I could still sit and, take phone calls, have video chats, talk people through the disease progression, let them know what's going on with their pet.
So I think there a lot of people refer to that as triage, teletriage. And so that's something that's kind of already out there. And it's really interesting to me. And then there's other things like, there's an outfit called Vets on Call Network. You ever heard of that one? VOCN. No. So they're out of New York, maybe New York City. I should know that because I really like them. And so what they've done is this gentleman that started it is a neurologist. And so what he saw as veterinary neurologist is that there was such a bottleneck for specialties. Whereas you're like, I don't have time to drive my dog 200 miles, or I just with my work schedule, I just can't do it. And so what they are putting together is a specialist group where you could do telemedicine, and it can be with you and the veterinarian, and they can call in, or you can do it without them. And that way you can be fast tracked to that, whatever that specialty is. And we've worked with them for telecytology. We're trying to figure out, we actually have our own channel on their network where, as a veterinarian, you could send in pathology for essentially a read. And so we've been working on that for a couple of years. It's just not enough hours in a day, for some of these things. But yeah, there's going to be a need for a person to be there and be the intermediate, essentially. So for sure, there's ways for people with those skill sets just to be very valuable to our space.
Yeah, no, I think, and you referred to teletriage. The way, and when I was talking to Frank, that he kind of envisions his model is that he would contract directly with clinics to serve, so that he would be practicing in partnership with the clinic.
He'd be their online veterinarian, essentially.
Exactly. But and I think his goal is that that it would establish VCPR because he would be contracting through the clinic. So he could diagnose and recommend, and it would have access to the medical records and things like that.
There's no doubt that there is a way for that to work. There's no doubt in my mind. And, there would be a time where he'd be like, okay, we're to a disease complex that you got to go in. But it didn't matter whose that is. Comes a point where you're like, got to have an x-ray. I need blood work. And so that needs to be in some sort of physical form. But there's no doubt that could be a person who is essentially weeding those out. Like, okay, you're describing this disease. We're going to start with this treatment, which will be no different. The only difference is you can't listen to their heart and lungs, but there's no doubt there's a way for you to say, we're going to start with this. And if this doesn't clear up, it's time to be seen. There's a big, I don't know what the percentage would really be across the board, but I'm going to say you could probably see 20% of patients that way.
That was about his estimate. Yeah. 10.
Yeah, 15 or 20%. I think you would be very safe in doing that. And some of those may be you see them and you're like, got to come in, because there are going to be people that don't want to come in. They're just trying to figure out any way to not come in. And you've just got to be aware of what the line is. You just got to have it very, in your own mind, like we get to hear, I can't do that. But man, if you think about that, 20% though, that's a lot.
Saves a lot of time for people in the clinic, for sure.
Saves a lot of time, and it's efficient, and it could be very cost effective because they're not having to drive, they don't have to go. It could work.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be interesting to see. It'll be very interesting to see. Cade, I know we're getting up on 3:30 here, and you mentioned you had to go see a patient. And
yeah, man,
with how busy it sounds like you are, I really appreciate you taking the time and finding time to join us here on Petworking. This has been a great conversation. It's really fun to see Skoped growing and all the different applications, and hopefully this encourages a few more clinics to bring it on and make it a part of their cytology arsenal.
Yeah, just take a look and see how it can help you. I really believe if you literally just used it and posted things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis on social media, which would be free, it's going to drive business back to you. It's a really good educational tool for what you actually deal with in your area. And it's a really easy thing in practice to educate those clients. If you just did it for that, it's going to more than pay for itself the first week.
It's an interesting perspective. I mean, let alone the educational value that you outlined, but being able to kind of walk your clients through it, show them the evidence, get their buy-in, and make them feel like more of a part of that treatment journey. I think that's incredibly valuable as well.
Well, if people want to know more, skopedmicro.com, SKOPED micro. Also, I write for Veterinary Practice News. I had 4 or 5 articles this year, so take a look at that if you're really bored. And I look forward to the next time I'm talking to you. It's been too long, Peter. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, this has been great. And I'm sure we'll see each other at a conference coming up soon, but we'll hopefully be in touch before then.
I look forward to it. You guys have a great day.
Hey, you too. Thanks so much, everyone. It's been another episode of Petworking. This is Peter Kenseth signing off.